Welcome to the Bay Area Actor Podcast. This is home for any actor in the Bay Area who would like to find more work. All right. Well, we welcome all of you to another episode of the Bay Area Actor. We are honored and thrilled today to have Leonard Dolivio and David Silverman. I don't even know, what would you, when people say, what do you do? What's your first response, gentlemen?
Well, mostly I make my living as a writer now. My day jobby is kind of editing for everything from academic books to I also consult as a writing coach for screenplays and TV pilots and things like that. Mm-hmm. Just did a pilot a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, and so that's Leonard, and here's David.
An artist. You give me the medium and I work in it.
What's your favorite medium to work in?
You know, I'm a painter. I went back to school after years of performing and I started painting. Mm-hmm. And the immediate satisfaction I got of making an artifact and not having to audition and not having to think about a bigger thing, it's just me and that canvas. Even when I collaborate with other people, it's a kind of different thing because you're working towards this tangible thing that kind of stops in motion.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, artist and painting mostly now.
Well,
although I teach performing arts kindergarten through 8th grade at Kittredge School here in the city.
Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, how rewarding that must be.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we have a mutual dear friend in Joan Spangler.
Yes.
And she's...
And I can sign on to that one, too. Even though I don't really think Joan is a person very, very dear to me.
Mm. Tell me, so let's just turn this into the Joan show, but just how does that, because I feel the same way. She's just an incredible woman. Tell me how you both came to...
I met Joan in, I think, 1990, and I was working at a restaurant. She had come over to our house for dinner. My partner at the time was a makeup guy and a photographer, and I just hit it off with her. We just started talking, we're laughing, and she mentioned that her daughter, Heather, just needed a day off during the week, and I said, I'd love to work in an office like that. So I came in one day a week, and it was just the best job ever. Calling up actors, giving auditions, it was just so much fun, and there was no food involved. Like I didn't have to wait tables, I didn't have to cook it, and I was like, this is great. And then after a while, I transferred full time at the agency. They had me doing commercial print, so I worked there for, 6 years.
Wow.
I went to LA for 6. I came back here for another 8 or 6 there. So worked a lot of agency.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Leonard?
Joan I met, well, this is, it's interesting to me because for me, the overlapping of performing and writing, because I'm driving over here, I'm thinking like, that's interesting to me because, and I'm going to come back to Joan in a second, but I think I learned the most about writing. I started out as a production designer. And then segued into writing. I became a rewriter in Los Angeles, ghostwriter, rewriter for studio and indie films. And when I was trying to retrain myself to write, I didn't like the screenplay books, but the acting books. The first book that really taught me a lot about writing was Uta Hagen's In Respect for Acting. Mm-hmm. I had studied as a teenager at HB Studio under Bill Hickey.
I studied with Bill Hickey too. Wasn't he something?
I have amazing stories about Bill
So
Hickey,
do I.
as anyone does.
So do I. He'd come in at 8 in the morning with a coffee mug, but it was absolutely filled with booze. I'm positive.
Oh, really? See, for me, I guess, I don't know, mine was before or after, but he'd be coming with 2 cups of coffee, take the lids off, go to the sink that's sort of hidden by a curtain, dump 3/4 of the coffee out, fill them both with booze with a little trace of coffee, sit down, light his cigarette.
Yes.
Okay, let's begin.
Oh, God, he was a show.
So because of that, I knew I had read the Uta Hagen book, and I found as a writer it was more instructive than Sid Field for me personally, by far. The scene starts before the scene starts. Mm-hmm. The scene goes on after the scene ends. Each person has an inner motivation and outer motivation, and is driving for their position. And to me, that informed elevated my writing skills far more than any other sort of instructive, prescriptive screenwriting book.
Wow. Yeah, I understand completely. That makes perfect sense. Well, I know one of the reasons why Joan wanted us to meet, when I asked for referrals, because she knows the vision of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help actors in the Bay Area understand that you can live here and have a career. But to do it, you better be proactive, and you better have a bunch of different poles in the water. to do it. And so she said, you have to meet Leonard and David. They will be beautiful ambassadors on behalf of examples of doing that. So really, guys, this is going to be more, I just want to hear your stories. I want to hear, just understand, the people listening to this right now are up-and-coming actors in the Bay Area. I just would like to open this up. What would you like to say to them? What advice can you give them?
I gotta tell you, I'll loop back around to Joan because this is the most performing I ever did was when I came, whatever, there's long stories about how my whole peripatetic trip, from a production designer in New York to segueing into being a professional writer in Los Angeles, and then leaving, traveling the world for a while, then coming back, deciding to come to San Francisco because David was my best friend. Mm-hmm. And so I came here and I didn't have a job, and they went, okay, well, let's get a headshot. Let's scribble out some kind of resume. And because
you can't see him, but Leonard's a really good-looking guy. Got a classic Italian, dark, tall, good-looking. Go ahead.
So just as I was aging out of that category, just after a life of, yes, by the way, and I say this with humility, just as the photogenic, the camera's my friend, turned its back on me, okay? Now, get out there. I'm like, oh my God, this is torture. And this is one reason it only lasted for a year. Because of Joan and because of David, my first year in San Francisco, I supported myself as a working actor.
How so? What were you doing?
Oh, just
primarily
like
commercials,
industrial, little
print jobs.
Nothing exciting. Quite a bit of print. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about internal, external stuff for Walgreens.
Glamorous stuff.
Glamorous stuff. One of the nicer ones was Hewlett Packard. Mm-hmm. Where they're going no, this guy doesn't wear a tie. He's like the high-end executive, ridiculous things, the stuff I assume that's known, like these Japanese TV shows that get shot here.
Oh, sure.
And so, too many of those where they wouldn't let me do it anymore.
Yes.
Because I did way too many. They were even when I'm nailing the thing. But at first, of course, like a fool, or I should say, like the beautiful naivete of the novice, I booked the first 4 jobs.
Yes.
And so Joan's like, is there anything this guy can't book? And I'm thinking, this is how it's always going to be.
Yeah.
And for me, because I'd rather be writing, the audition, because showing up on set was the easiest for me. When I was a young guy, I actually did a commercial when I was in my early 20s for AT&T playing Alexander Graham Bell. Mm-hmm. And the actors were like, oh, this is a hard one. It was Dress Extras, 76, Centennial, and 100 dress extras. Oh, by the way, I worked for the production company. It was an accident. I scouted the location, and this is pre-internet, so I also did all the sketches for the women's period costumes and hairstyles and the men's facial hair and hairstyles.
Sure.
And got accidentally cast. Whatever the classic, coming with location photos at the end of the day. Hold it! Get up there! Get on camera! Right? Steve Horn. Do you remember Steve Horn?
Yes.
Okay, so when there used to be such a thing as the top commercial director. So I worked for Steve as a location guy.
Okay.
Cast me in that, you go, and these actors Wilford Brimley literally is like, oh, this is a hard one. Right? And I'm like, they don't know I'm not an actor, and I don't let them know. Guerrilla theater. Yes. I'm like, you see that guy on the 30-foot ladder? I go, and the guy that's handing him that HMI, which weighs 100 pounds, I go, that looks hard.
Just saying.
And my first paid job, well, besides some modeling, was he recited Shakespeare, Bell. I forget exactly what it was, but it was to be or not to be. So my first big gig was that.
Yes. And
luckily, I have to say, I told myself I will not piss away on food and rent, so I went to Japan.
Where you were already a star because of all these shows.
Thank you.
That was way back. This is when I was a kid. This is when I was a young guy.
I
This is when I'm 22 years old, Anyway, but Joan and David allowed me to really experience, which I think as a filmmaker and a theater maker, there's nothing like the humility of having a horrific audition. Now, I think I would be generous anyway to performers, always making sure to treat everyone as, one, just being open to them, being the person who's going to nail it, even if it doesn't seem like it right away. And also, of course, working in advertising, sneaking people back into the callback list.
Sure.
And they're the ones who get it, even though everyone rejected them the first time around. Tell him just hold the product a little closer to your face.
And smile.
Yeah, just stop pulling your shoulder away from camera. Just like turn out, hold it closer to your face. That's all. There you go.
Wow, I have more. I mean, a bunch of questions that you've stirred up. But I'll circle back. How about you, David? How about advice that you'd like to impart on these up and coming actors in the Bay Area?
Although it sounds so heartless and cruel, you're a product. You're a product, and you have to have a marketing scheme. Coca-Cola doesn't sell as much as it sells because it sits at home and waits for people to drink it. It's everywhere you want to be. And every time you turn your head, it's telling you how important it is in your life. So as an actor, I think it's important to build that fan club. Your fan club is built from the shows you go to, from everything you do, and then help inform the people that you just saw what you do. So it's that constant marketing that you have to do without being irritating, but at the same time, when things happen, like you're in an independent feature and it goes to Sundance, you get the postcards out for everyone you know and you send them out. This is what I'm doing now. Hey, guess what? This is what I'm doing now. Hey, guess what? This is what I'm doing now. I'm doing a show. If you're not in the show, you're in class. Done. You have to work your instrument all the time. I'll tell a story. I was down in LA and I'd started painting. I was working with kids more. And I came back into town. I was working at the agency again. And I went for an audition for a film, and I got it. And I wasn't in a lot of, I wasn't in classes. And even though I'm seasoned professional, I had stepped away for a while. And I got on set, and guess what? I wasn't good. It was superstar, Academy Award winner in my face, and I wasn't good. I wasn't ready for that. Even though I'd done it before, I freaked out. Then the training kicked, after I got my bearings, the training kicked in and carried me through. But the importance of staying in tune to what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So if you are an actor, then you have to always be doing it. Period. To act is to do. That means you're doing it. And the second thing I'd say, if you don't love the whole process, if you don't like the auditioning, if you don't like the driving, if you don't like the being told no, if you don't like going to class, if you don't like being self-driven and self-motivated, don't do this. Because the reason why I told that story too, the joy of being an actor is being on set, right? And sometimes when you're on set, there's not even joy in that. If everyone's having a bad day, I did a movie of the week one time, and it was out in the water. We were Navy people, and we had to go out on the water in this big ship. And I was second day of filming, and the first day, it was empty cargo, and everyone got sick. It was awful. It was choppy. So when I got there, no one was happy. This was not a happy group of people. And it was like a 12-hour, 14-hour day on the water, and no one was happy, and people were throwing up, and it was awful, awful. And, as an actor, I'm waiting, I'm going to those auditions, I'm going to callback, I'm going to the second callback, I'm excited for my big moment on camera, only to have a cranky director, miserable stars, and everyone else just not as happy. Mm-hmm. So if you can't find happiness everywhere, don't do it. Because that has to be the love of your life. It's a hard business.
Mm-hmm. You talk about the discipline of that. My teacher, Sanford Meisner, used to say actors are the laziest segment of the artistic profession. He goes, you explain to me why a painter, a dancer, a musician, they'll practice hours upon hours their craft every day. And if they don't, they consider that a day lost. And why actors just sit around coffee houses all day long and bitch and moan and complain. He goes, I'll tell you why, because they all just simply want to be famous. Mm-hmm. He said being an actor was never supposed to be about fame and money. Right. It truly is a religious calling. Absolutely. And until recently, you couldn't even make a living at it, barely. And so, I one of the things that in establishing this school here in the Bay Area, my greatest frustration, I love it. I love our school. I love our students, the caliber and quality of student that we attract. Absolutely. It's hard to find people who care this much, who are willing to make this level of sacrifice and commitment. But that said, they don't get it. They don't get how competitive it is. Living up here in the Bay Area, I always call it the Bay Area float. It's like, it's so pretty and it's nice. And it's like when I go down and do my shows in L.A., my play on Sanford Meisner, I feel like it's like the Red Cross has arrived, and I'm giving IVs to these dying dreamers because they're battling daily. You drive down Sunset Boulevard, in an afternoon, and you're in it. And so I'm with you. I think it's beautiful advice that to constantly be working at your craft. Yeah.
Don't think for 1 second that everything you do isn't related to your acting craft.
Right.
And you have to be focused and aware of that every minute as an actor.
So, again, now I'm talking to our audience. We have these wonderful guests here today because they have done just that. They've been able to create a living and a career doing what they love to do. And they are examples, they're beacons of how to go about it. Now, there's no one right way or one way. Leonard's a prolific writer, although with a background in acting and performing as well. So let's and of course David wears both hats, multiple hats as well too. Let's get into it now, guys. I'd love to hear what you're working on, actually, I don't even want to. I've done my research to get ready to speak with you today, but I'd rather actually hear you guys talk about your current projects and what's exciting you and what you're creating and what you're working on.
Well, David and I are collaborating now on a project that is pretty exciting. We've been getting an awful lot of positive feedback. It's a sung-through musical, Call Me Tanya, the unauthorized occupation of Patty Hearst, an alternative identity musical. I don't know if you saw our callmetanya.com, TANIA, and David and I just started a company this year, 5Dmedialab.com, and 5D as in dimensional, because our ethos is that we're synthesizing instinct, vision, voice, emotion, and meaning. So we're really, at this point in my journey, don't even say career, really, is the idea of trying to bring all the capital I've developed as a visual artist, as the performing for me is very small, because I am that person who said, this is not for me, because I couldn't bring the full commitment to it, like I do bring to my writing, where I feel fully committed, and yes, it is exhausting work, and you're constantly doing it and constantly taking notes and constantly looking at other work and trying to understand how to develop one's voice so that it is singular and unique and yet is somehow touching the universal. And this particular project is what is the main focus of our company right now.
Where are you at with the project? Can you talk about that?
So we've done a few showcases with it, and we've worked and reworked the pieces.
Yeah, but the thing, obviously, it's fully written, it's fully developed. At that point, we're really now looking for producing partners and collaborative performers. It's actually kind of tricky because we need people who are singers. However, this is interesting. In musical theater, especially, let's think about like the kind of like the classic or cliche thin line, right, of Broadway style musical theater, is that in film acting and in traditional straight stage acting, it's not overly performative. Whereas in musical theater, people are rewarded for being performative. For they're literally going, look how hard I'm acting, look how hard I'm singing, look how hard I'm dancing. And of course, we don't want that. This is because it's a sung-through musical especially. It's really all about, can you have the feeling and leave room for the audience to lean forward?
Beautiful.
Into
Beautiful. Oh, we need to introduce you to some of our people. I guarantee you they can support what you're trying to do because that's their training.
This is awesome because there's a few key principles, such as the lead character, who's a woman protagonist, it's a real life story. We've been historically and psychologically accurate. In 1974, she was kidnapped at the age of 19. She was what today would be a billionaire's daughter, a media empire, the Hearst Empire. And she was held in a closet. She was kidnapped by some political, radical, militant group, and she was held in a closet for 58 days. She was drugged, beaten, and given military-grade mind control until she emerged declaring a new identity as Tanya and her choice, in air quotes, to join her kidnapper's mission to overthrow the U.S. government.
It's funny. I mean, I'm 60 years old. I remember all of this vividly, and yet I think a great deal of our people listening to this probably don't even know the story. And as you're saying it, I'm just literally getting chills remembering the chaos of that time and how everyone was split. You know, has she really been brainwashed, or is it something else going on? And what a fascinating journey you guys have been on with this, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've tried very much. I think that the thing that's, having done some full-length readings here, which of course means singings, it's interesting to hear from people who were there, meaning people older than myself who remember the whole experience and were here in the Bay Area when it happened, and their reaction to the material. I mean, basically the thing I'm most encouraged by is when I first reading how many people wept, how many people came up to me later and said that they were still talking about it a couple months later with other people that had seen it, and even doing some smaller showcases, people going on about how moved they were to cry hearing a 20-minute showcase.
Well, when we finally, air this episode, we will provide all your contact information in case there's anybody out there listening who would, like to be able to come on board with producing support, etc., or any capacity. We'll provide this contact information. How did it? Go ahead.
No, I'm going to say, and we're looking for collaborators across every aspect. You know, we're really open to, because we really want to find people. You know, even the same thing. It's like I always say, like, shopping projects is a little bit like dating. You don't want to have to convince someone who's disinterested. Sure. We're saying we're looking for the people who are also looking for us.
Right. Beautiful.
And the project it's more resonant now than a few years ago when we started, because of the issues of fake news. The lead character is a 19-year-old girl. Her grandfather invented yellow journalism and literally got us into the Spanish-American War with lies about the sinking of a ship that didn't really happen in that way. The ship sank, but not for the reason that he said. Anyway, I want to circle back for 1 second and just say that, so for us, performing is so much more important in acting than singing. So someone like the lead character, she must be able to sing really well. At the same time, the parents, there's 4 principals, her parents, the mother doesn't really need to sing that well. It's more like an Elaine Stritch type person who the force of her inner life is what, and that's what we want in all this, the force of the inner life is what we want to animate this. And we want someone who's not trying to blow your hair back in the 10th row and actually, sometimes my eyebrows, are blown back. We want someone who has such a commitment to their own inner reality, because the show itself is about competing versions of reality. Even across the whole show, we have stagehands performed by actors simultaneously, so we're actually confusing the reality of the theater house with the story world reality, and consistently across the whole piece in a way that I think is totally entertaining. I think a lot of experienced theater goers who are educated will still believe they're stagehands.
Beautiful. Wow.
But they also, at moments, must be able to perform because they're actually having emotions as they're engaging with this, wordlessly resonating in a way that is completely part of the geometry of the narrative.
Oh my goodness, I look forward to seeing this very much. Do you have a hope? Well, here, let me ask it this way. Do you plan on debuting it, having the world premiere be here in the Bay Area?
Ideally, yes, because it's
Bay Area story.
Right.
Well, it's a Bay Area story. The older theater goers are going to remember it, and it's really about young people. Almost everyone in this story is, except for a few key people, are 20-somethings.
Yes. My goodness.
And trying to figure out what their role is in the responsibility of a world that needs to change.
How did you guys come to this project? How did it come to you?
Let Leonard, you start, and then I'll tell. No, I remember.
Well, actually, as I mentioned earlier, I consult on people's coaching projects, but also I get a lot of I do consulting academic editing for academic books, white papers, journal articles, and I do a lot of work in the psychology realm. So someone was writing a book on coerced perpetration called The Alchemy of Wolves and Sheep. Actually, I helped title it because they had a big, long academic title that is impossible to remember. About, relational approach to coerced perpetration in complex trauma patients. So it's really, and so this is taking the idea, and his book actually won an international award in 2017, published by Routledge. And because it was new literature, no one was really dealing with the idea of complex trauma from a relational point of view with a lens onto coerced perpetration. Coerced perpetration is when someone forces you to do something you don't really want to do, especially evil or bad things against a third party. And so from that book, there was even, I put little epigraphs at the beginning of every chapter. And one was from Patty Hearst. And one day, it's so interesting because David's been my best friend for maybe 25 years, and usually I'm like, I have to ask him, like, do I want to do anything? Hey, David, am I thirsty? Should I make iced tea? Is it worth it?
That is a good friend.
And in this case, instead of asking him, should I do this project, should I do that project, I'm working on these side things,
You actually called me and said, I had a flash. I'm like, what? What's your flash? No, I'm working on this editing on this Wolves and Sheep, and I had a flash. Patty Hearst. She was a child soldier. I'll tell you more later. And then, then a couple hours later, okay, David, I think I got it. I think it's a musical. No, I know, I'm writing a play. It's a play about Patty Hearst. I said, okay, excellent, good, can't wait. Go back to my business, whatever I'm doing. Get a call back another hour. It's a musical! I'm all, oh, good, a musical. I have a lot of experience doing that. Singing in them, but not producing them, I don't know.
And how long ago was this?
3 years ago?
3 years ago. And so here we are 3 years later. And so... Go ahead.
Oh, I also have to disclaim. Please. I have to disclaim because when I say musical, I got to say it's not your grandmother's musical and it's not your favorite Uncle Bruce's musical.
No.
Yep.
It is grounded in the music of the time period.
Got it.
So it has the folk and rock vernacular of the 70s, but interpreted through, very lucky for us, is that the, whatever they call indie alt, folk and rock today, is the identical vernacular with small tweaks. So it should feel very fresh and contemporary. And then the parents who were involved in a generation gap, which a lot of people aren't aware what that was, meaning back in that time period, no one wore the same hairstyle, clothing, eyeglass style as their parents. They didn't listen to the same music. It was impossible. Whereas today, people are wearing the same styles as the kids and the parents are wearing the same hairstyles and clothes and glasses. And so the parents skew, their music is sort of vamps and rips and interpretation of traditional 20th century show tunes. So it comments on show tunes at the same time by having the parents be involved in something more traditionally musical theater show tune.
I've been blessed to have the same producing partner for 28 years now. He, at one time, I looked at him, I go, you know what, you are everything I'm not. And he looked up, he goes, exactly, you too. And so we complement each other beautifully. Can you guys talk about that, your collaboration process and what, how you work together on this? I am a big fan. I'm not a writer, and yet I've written several plays, several screenplays, and I've been very blessed to have them advance my career in a huge way. But I know writers. I mean, like, for real talented writers. I'm just a guy who started writing so I could create more opportunities for me to work, and apparently it wasn't horrible, and I got better at it. And the reason why I bring it up is I think there's a lot of people out there who think to themselves, oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And I think that the writing process, I needed somebody, I needed a partner. I needed somebody who was way better than me. I had strengths at the writing process, especially dialogue, because of the training. It's so moment to moment to moment to moment that dialogue is a strength of mine. But so many other aspects of the writing process, not including the discipline, for a while. So could you please address that as collaborators, as partners, as producers together of your dreams and your voices?
Well, again, it depends on what medium we're working in. We don't work just only in writing. You know, there's every time we enter, because we're both artists and we're friends and we're collaborators, as we enter into these different times of our lives or different projects, we're there for each other. So it takes on the ability to let go of my preconceived notions about a thing, to be able to sit with someone, to be able to hear them, and actively and honestly communicate from that place. That's the support I can give my friend and artist Leonard. Right? If I can't be present, I can't do that. So is that any different than acting? Our job is to become present, to see what's in front of us, to authentically feel as something enters into my field, and own that, see how that resonates and come out. And then, of course, if you're acting with someone else's words, how those words affect that feeling and that weird intersection of smashed up realities, right? So, yeah.
You know, I think because we're lucky we have the common sort of metaphor to depart from. We both draw and paint.
Yep.
So, and for me, drawing, and I coach drawing as well for people. And one of the most fun thing I can do is to coach someone the very first time in front of other people. There's people who literally cannot draw a stick figure. So I always say, okay, put down a line, now put down a darker line, now put down a lighter line. Okay, and then I say, at which point did you feel the pencil was going to break through the paper or fly out of your hand? And they laugh. I go, it doesn't happen in your hand. Right? Drawing is simply observing what's in front of you, really seeing what's in front of you, and then drawing is the effortless byproduct of having observed.
Wow.
It's an effortless byproduct of reporting what you observed. So when people, and so that I had once, I did this with some teenagers once, and the kid couldn't do it, but I had him draw a bottle. Now a bottle with a label, an empty bottle with a label, and he actually drew something. I mean, he was blown away, the other kids were blown away. I go, because of course he drew the top as a flat circle, meaning as if you traced a penny. And I go, that's because you know it looks like that. I go, tell me, what does it look like? Look across it. I never touch his page. I talked to him about the idea, if you looked straight at the edge, it'd be a line. It'd be this kind of ellipse halfway. If you're staring straight down, it'd be a circle. What do you see? How do you see this come back? And in an hour, he drew a bottle that looked like someone who a senior whose favorite class is art.
Sure, right.
And the other kids were like just flipping out. And so to me, writing is kind of similar. To me, I always work structurally. Having worked as a script doctor and a ghostwriter, it's all about the structure. The structure is the foundation of the entire work, then each act. And of course, in musical theater, I have 2 acts, but I still apply what we call the 3-act structure, which of course is really a 4-act structure, because the midpoint is another situation. So the whole idea was to find, for me in this project, was to take the number one mistake a novice screenwriter and stage writer makes, which is to have a passive protagonist, that things happen to. I mean, this is such a remedial blunder that I had, of course, a kidnapping victim who loses her agency. So the trick was, that's how I knew it had to be a musical. So I could go into the psychological space where the conflicts are taking place and having the commentary across all angles.
That was one of my questions was, why a musical? But you just answered it. So another aside is, and I'd like it for both of you, what musicals have inspired you over the years? What musicals have you seen that you really were like, whoa, that's something else? Anything come to mind?
Well, I can tell you the first musical I ever saw.
Sure.
There you go.
Okay, so I grew up, people say, where are you from? I always say New York because it's faster, right? I moved to New York when I was 17. And I became a New Yorker in about 3 months. And literally, the first day I was there, people were asking me for directions.
Yeah, you definitely have a New York.
No one ever goes like, "No, you're not. Where are you really from?" My family's Italian, and they always say, "What do you?" Because I grew up out in the woods in Vermont, and people are like, "What are Italians doing there?" Because they're thinking like, it's the Fonz or something, like you're like some Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn. Yeah. And of course, the stonecutters are up there. My father and my grandfather were stonecutters, and there's quarries up there, so there's a lot of stonecutters in Vermont. My father I grew up in a little town, one-room schoolhouses. If you do the Google map, it exists now.
My daughter went to Middlebury.
Okay, yeah.
So
okay,
I've been to Vermont.
Yeah. And Middlebury's a big town compared to
Yeah, no, I know, it's huge.
Once I went to a one-room schoolhouse with both my brothers in the same schoolhouse. And so my father who was a stonecutter, was offered from they mostly made memorials, which is
Sure.
gravestones.
Yep.
And they had offered him a ticket to a Broadway play, because they do a lot of brokering, of course, in the New York areas where they're buying that stuff.
Sure.
So he says, okay, let's go, right? And so the way that he could justify bringing his mistress, he would bring his 12-year-old son, who he knew would probably get along there. So I'm traveling there with his mistress, while he's married to my mom, and him, and we go down, and they had picked a play for us to see, and of course we got the insider scoop, because these are the real Guidos from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you want to see a show? I got a guy.
Yeah.
You know, and so we are third row center to see Hair.
Oh my, stop it.
And this is the early 70s.
Come on.
And it is literally the first Broadway run.
You saw that?
But,
That's history.
But I have to tell you, I had never seen a play before.
Oh.
I had never seen a school play. Because where I grew up, there was no such thing as a school play.
Yeah.
I mean, we sang songs at Christmas
Oh
time,
my
don't get me
goodness.
wrong.
That
But,
was just blowing your mind.
well, it flipped me out.
Yeah.
Definitely informed my theater taste.
Well, and of course, just a quick side trip is at the end of it. Of course, we go stay in a hotel, which is now the Edison, which is super upscale.
Sure.
But it was a nightmare. I mean, what was going on? I won't digress into what I saw. I'm like, what? Oh, by the way, because I'm there, I'd never seen a building over 4 stories tall. Now we're in Manhattan, right? And so saw the show. It scared the shit out of me. Mm-hmm. I mean, because then my father and his mistress, of course, went up on the stage to dance afterwards. I was just terrified.
Yeah.
But I was thrilled
No.
and exhilarated, and my life changed.
Yeah.
And so, but then afterwards, my father, we went to the hotel, and he thought, like, you're not taking, you think I'm a country bumpkin. You're not taking advantage of me. We were literally in the room. I'm like, let's just lay down and sleep. It's like, whatever, midnight. So he decides we'll sleep in the car in Little Italy, on the street, because in Little Italy, they won't take advantage of you. Right? Because they have someone to answer to. So we slept in the car and drove home the next day, and my life changed completely. I had seen that show, and something really penetrated me, and something inside me began to grow, to understand, like, this is something that is so transformative and so powerful. And also, we have to remember, which I know, Jim, you do, that was radical in its time.
Oh, absolutely.
That theater wasn't like that.
No.
The idea is just cursing
Yeah.
on stage was radical. And the same thing, we're trying to really break a lot of barriers with this particular show. We're trying to really honor the conventions and some of the structural conventions, but at the same time take something much further to make something very transformative. And we also believe, because the psychological consultant who wrote The Alchemy of Wolves and Sheep is a psychological consultant for our project.
Oh.
And he has, actually, on our website, callmetanya.com, he has like a 20-minute blurb on the piece saying that no movie or play has actually ever covered the subject matter, and how this could actually really help people who have been enduring trauma, those with ongoing PTSD and those who have just dealing with
Beautiful.
the reality,
Yep.
mind confusion and the pressures on society. It's very, kind of interesting. But that was the first play.
How about you, David? Good luck topping that story.
My dad taught theater. He was an actor, and my mom an artist. Try to not be your parents. Go ahead, try. And so my early years were spent at the little theater, because he was a high school teacher, and they were always working, and we had 9 kids in my family, so my choice was either be the chaos of the house or the semi-chaos of the theater, and I liked the theater. I remember seeing a production of The Fantastics that he did, and in this little theater, thrust stage, it's built in the 70s, and in the brick walls, they had these missing bricks, and so he had someone scale the wall of the theater, and I remember just in rehearsal them kind of coming up with this, and I was young. I was like 3 or 4, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. No, how about this? No, Doc, no, Paul, this. And then everyone getting more and more excited and watching these people just start throwing these ideas around him. My dad was pretty open because he just wanted a really good production. He wanted buy-in. I could see it now as a teacher, exactly what he's doing, letting the kids have a voice, and then they get further invested into the project. And I remember watching the process, and then during the show, even just as a kid, I remember seeing the spotlight hit the performer on the wall, high up, and I was a kid, so high up on the wall, probably 6 or 7 feet. But I remember that feeling of literally just going off the stage, breaking the wall, breaking the rules, and how exciting that was to me, of not knowing what to expect and then expecting something and then, the opposite happened. So that was my early stuff was the Fantastics, I remember. And then, but to me, theater is all about going and being open to it. So we went to go see Miss Saigon, and I knew nothing about the show. I didn't really see it in the 90s. Wasn't there. Didn't know anything about it. I purposely didn't read about it. We went, and I was just like blown away by that production. The theatricality of what they did was like, whoa. Like the singing, they're not my really kind of songs. They kind of hit me at full force, They bring a little kid out, and she's singing at that baby. I'm like, who's paying for the therapy?
Beautiful.
But the actual experience of what they did with that show and space and light, and it was mind-boggling.
You both are such, again, creators of art, of your dream, and examples, again, of and that's why I'm so honored and thrilled to have you here. Examples and embodiment of what I believe is possible, which is you can have a career as an artist and live where you want to, but again, you have to be, as I said earlier, so proactive. So I'd like to come back to that because I want to try to inspire our audience to not be just typical actors. I say all the time to our students, there's nothing more common than incredibly well-trained, out-of-work actors. And the business of the dream. You talked again earlier, David, about that, about the marketability of being on it. Most artists are horrible at the business. So I'd like to talk about your journey of 3-4 years ago coming up with this concept, and here we are today, and now trying to find the producing partners, maybe even the financing. I don't know where it's at. I don't want, whatever you're comfortable talking about. But just as an example, I wrote a screenplay a couple years ago with my writing partner. We thought it was really good. We happened to have a very strong relationship with a gentleman named Barry Osborne, who's the Academy Award-winning director of Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, in a 35-year career. And we sent it off to Barry as a favor, get some notes and feedback. 2 days later, Barry Osborne calls me up and says, "Oh my God, this is one of the greatest scripts I've ever read." I'm shaking. I'm thinking, wow, this film is going to get made tomorrow.
Right.
That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the budget's only a couple $1 million. Now, Barry's off. You think, well, where did he go? He's now off in New Zealand. He's been back down to New Zealand, and getting Barry's attention is difficult. And I'm not trying to name drop. I'm trying to give an example of, here is somebody who is incredibly skilled at what he does, has read this script and thinks it's incredible, and yet I'm with William Morris. I have beautiful agents. I'm still struggling, trying to find the partners who it's a good fit for. Can you talk about that, please? Can you talk about the journey of it's one thing to create beautiful content and art, but now getting it out there and getting the support and finding the teammates and building your artistic family. Anything you'd like to share on this?
I can so relate to what you're talking about. I said, I hope at the end of it all, my biography title isn't Almost. That's it, almost.
Because there is some of that.
The biography of Leonard Dolivio. Because, there's so much. Same thing. Like, I managed to, when I was in LA, I supported myself for 12 years as a writer. I did dovetail it as a production designer for the first few years. And, I had 3 deals coming together at different times with Miramax, which in the 90s is like saying your first painting show was at the biggest, most popular, most important gallery in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
I even had to go once. I went and had to travel to New York and get Jude Law convinced, yes, I'm doing it. And there were a few other actors, too, who then eventually, it's like, oh, almost. Like, yes, I can, but now I have this A-list thing that is going to take my attention away. So to me, it's trying to stay happy with knowing the work is good. That's important for me. I can't really relate to people who say, "Oh, my work, I wake up one day, I think it's shit." Like, maybe I shouldn't be saying that because so many people say that, but I just think, that's what keeps me going, knowing, yes, no, this is solid. I do have my training, I have my foundation, I have the capital that I've developed and put forward into this. But that almost thing is just something used to. I'm sure I'm getting used to it. We had someone
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's a fine line. But you don't want to get, you don't want to get cynical. You don't want to just, have this attitude of, oh God, But it's, I heard years ago a great quote, which is, it's in Hollywood, it's not the no's that'll break your heart, it's the yeses or the almost.
Well, I say,
right?
yeah, but it is a yes. No, because they said, yes, it's happening. Here we have it. They're going together.
Or you shoot it and then it doesn't go.
Yeah.
Or how many commercials have I seen and how many have I been in movies and I cut out of? Or absolutely, it's a heartbreaking business.
And like I said, even though I'm not naming the other people that were making it go, 3 different times. Yeah. And it just doesn't, it doesn't happen.
So so there it is, that resiliency to take a punch, to have it seem like it's so ready to go, table set, here we go, it's going to be it, and then it falls apart. And then to pick yourself up and go again and keep going. You guys, again, most people quit this profession. I remember when I first started, I'd hear people say, how long are you going to give it? I'd be looking around going, you got to be kidding me. What an attitude going in. I never had that approach.
Wait, is there a choice?
Right, exactly. So
if there's a choice, let me choose. But if there is not, I am here for the duration. So I just have to figure out how I'm a creator. I'm a creative type. It's what I have to do. I've done it where I've made money. I've done it where I don't make that much money. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is when I am in my authentic being, when I am allowed to create, when I am allowed to be creative and just have that rush and do what I'm meant to be here for. I'm not a suit and tie guy, I'm not I don't make plans really well. Like I'm a teacher, I can plan for that kind of stuff, but when it's talking like the big arch of your life, I am like in it and I'm focused and I'm ready. The actor prepares, I'm prepared, I'm ready. I have training in my acting, I have training in my art. Let's start, let's go.
Beautiful, so well stated.
And for myself, when people say like, oh, it might not work, because again, we just had it out to someone, a big New York producer who loved it, but at his institution, the word he used 4 times to let me know, very empathetically and sympathetically, that he was trapped in doing this, but it could have been this go thing. And again, it's never over. It's never over. I always say it's not over till it's over, and it's never over. But for me, when somebody goes like, it may not work out, I say, you know what? I don't need help with the feeling cynical and bitter, okay? I read about that in a magazine. I have totally got that covered, right? I need help saying, you know what? This has enormous potential to reach people, to change their lives, and to have an enormous commercial success. I say, just help me with that part. That other part, I got it covered.
So let's jump in there. You guys, again, have had these beautiful careers. And hearing your honesty, like mine as well, some really beautiful years and some times where you definitely struggle along. I've been doing this 31 years. Yep. Can you address those moments, the dog days of being a dreamer and an artist and a creator, the dog days where you're feeling a bit lonely or beat up and even depressed? Can you just talk about anything for anyone out there right now that might be listening to this that's on the verge of quitting or feeling pretty cynical, bitter, frustrated, etc.?
I was working at an agency that went under in LA, and it was awful. It was just the worst thing you could ever imagine. And I remember just wanting to stop everything. Just, I'm done. I'm done with the whole thing. And then I meditate, I do yoga, and I remember thinking about it and just saying, what is it that I need to do right now? What is it? Because I'm trying so hard here, and I'm the Lone Ranger. In Los Angeles, you really feel it. Even if you have friends and stuff, it's like it's something about that town. And I remember very distinctively, go help someone. That was what the little voice inside, the intuition said. And I went down to a arts incubator downtown, and I just volunteered my time there. Well, we can pay. I don't want money. I just want to come here. I want to swing a hammer. I want to demolish, and I want to do whatever you want me to do. Beautiful. Just give me something to do. And I started working there full-heartedly for a week, and they go, we have to pay you. You can't show up like this. You work this hard. But meanwhile, I have this thing I have to give, right? Because I have to be involved. I mean, isolation is the worst part. Right?
My beautiful partner in this school and in my life, Melissa Thompson-Osaya, has created a documentary film called The Beginner's Guide to Saving the World, and the story of her struggle of trying to be an activist and have a voice. And she interviewed Michael Franti, the musician. Michael said something beautiful in the interview. He said that he said, if you're feeling defeated or depressed or beat up, he goes, the best advice I can give you is go help somebody else.
Absolutely.
And it literally, as you're talking, I got to chill as well because it is so true.
Yeah. The whole life just changed and shifted, and art all of a sudden opened, and I had a venue for everything. We ended up doing some play work there too.
Yeah, and I also want to say the same thing. Even when I was here in San Francisco and things weren't exactly what I wanted them to be, I ended up deciding I was really down, really feeling horrible. And I went and started volunteering at 826 Valencia, which is Dave Edgar's organization to help kids write their college essays and things like that. I also started coaching and advising at a school in Nevada, Marin School of the Arts theater program, which is amazing because you go in there, they have the resources. These kids are just open and everything's happening, and you get to like work with these kids and do stuff and come up with. Actually, I wrote a play for them, Blown Away. Did a full-length play for them, which it was great because one of the kids. This is horrible horn tooting, but one kid came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, I left this school. I've seen like 10 years of plays here. This is the best ever."
Wow. Yeah.
Sweet.
I know. It was, but I'll give another angle on that.
Please.
So I do believe that volunteering, and I know other people, friends of mine who aren't even in the arts, who are feeling so bad, like literally suicidal. And I'm like, go volunteer, go help someone else. Put your attention on someone else and what they need and what you can provide. That's helped me a great deal. Another thing, when I've reached really dark, really dark, when I left LA and I thought, oh, this isn't happening. I thought it was, I'd won some national and international awards with work before. And I'm like, well, this means the red carpet's coming. And, I left going, oh, I didn't know it was a punchline. I honestly thought that it was all about talent and hard work. And now I'm like, that's a punchline. I didn't know that. I thought I was like kind of like this savvy guy. And at those times, sometimes I just say, okay, stop, and pardon the awkward pun, and just pull back. Pull back to reveal that there's an aesthetic to what's going on with you now. We go see movies that are tragedies. We go see operas that are tragedies. We read novels where Job is going through a lot worse, okay? And so the idea is to say, okay, well, you know what? I'm a human being. I'm an artist. I have to experience all the colors in the Crayola 64 set. I don't just have the colors that I like, or the pretty ones, or the ones that are, that I'm drawn to. There's these dark, muddy, ugly colors, and this is part of my journey. And if I can just stop and pull back and see the aesthetics of it, that I am I'm the hero in the most brilliantly written novel ever, that's dovetailing with everyone else's brilliantly written novel. And if I can just stop and get the aesthetic distance to see that it's okay the way it is, even if it's painful.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not making this beautiful statement, with a feature film or with an international hit play, but the same dynamics I'm experiencing is the same aesthetic, is the same resonance, is the same depth that I'm trying to capture and put into my work.
My goodness, this interview is already running long, and I feel like we've just begun, and so what I'm saying is I'm gonna start to close things down on this beautiful note. I know we could talk for a lot longer about a lot of different things, but I think what you just shared, for me anyway, personally, is a highlight from all the podcasts. No exaggeration. I think it's just wise and true, and it can only come from people that have been on that journey and on that road. So a couple smaller questions as we close this out. What's the best advice you've ever received and the worst advice you've ever received? David? Or Leonard, whoever wants to go first. Either about life, being a dreamer, being in this business, the best advice and the worst advice.
I remember when I graduated from high school, and I was in all the plays and everything, and there's a guy, he was the home ec teacher. Not home ec, he was like, I can't remember what he did. Anyway, I didn't know the guy. He shook my hand, what are you going to do when you get out of here? So I'm going to go be an actor. He chuckled, good luck with that. And I'll tell you, that cynicism and nasty bitterness motivated me to go out and work with Academy Award, nominated and winning stars that it gave me just every time I booked another job, every time I took that great audition, every time I had a victory, I said, here's to you, Mr. Dresbach. Thanks for your motivation. So that took me a while. That was actually a good one where it kind of went through my heart.
Absolutely.
At the same time, you know what? It really empowered me. So sometimes you can use it for the good.
Yep.
Gee, I don't know how to. I mean, to me, I'm still getting bad advice. Every person who, they'll look at your work and they'll, I call it the power of negation. You learn this in Los Angeles. You bring a screenplay to some major producer, who should know better, or the head of development for some big thing. They can't remember the name of the characters. They can't remember which character is actually which role, which character name is which role, but they know which one should be cut out of the story.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So as a power negation, they can't really bring something to it. So I was like, we can tear this out.
Yeah.
And I'm still getting advice like that.
Yeah.
Where people are saying, I don't want to specifics is who's listening.
Yeah, I understand.
But the idea is people want to, the thing is, with work, when you want to do extraordinary work, people want to compare it to the mean, to what is familiar.
Right.
So it means often they're trying to pull you back to the cliche.
That's right.
Because they're comfortable with the cliche, and also they're not really in the position of understanding the full scope of it to give true critical critique evaluation within the larger field of the history of this particular media and the idea of how things change and how one aesthetic, emerges up out of what had become stale. And so you always have to, like I said, I'm constantly hearing how this really should be closer to the cliche, and that trying to break new ground is you're doing it wrong.
William Goldman, the great screenwriter, just passed away, and he's the one that coined the iconic phrase, "No one in this town knows anything."
Right.
And no one knows exactly. And it is so true. I mean, again, that's why I'm saying I feel like I could talk to you guys all day long, because I everything you're saying I can relate to and identify with, and have stories to share as well. With that, how about best advice? Best advice. As a dreamer, as an artist, as a creator.
Yeah, I don't know if it's advice as much as just when I feel someone understands and appreciates what I'm doing. And again, it's the same thing. You don't want someone who wants to, you don't want someone to agree with you for the wrong reason. You know what I mean? So it's not merely getting praise. It's not like, oh, that's great,
right.
But someone who sees what's going on inside of it and appreciates how the painting was made. So not just that's a really nice looking painting, but someone sees, wow, that was really brave to use such restraint, and really brave to, like, over here have no restraint in the painting, as there are a little analogy here. And so someone who really can express their appreciation for what is going on in the work rather than it's nice. That's what gives me a little more fuel to get up another day and keep going with enthusiasm.
Yep. David?
For me, as far as advice, I'm a yogi, so a lot of what I do is, metaphysical. It's not seen. It's trusting that you go back to this yoga mat time and time again, for 23 years, 25 years, and you sit in uncomfortable postures, and we try to seek out the comfort within this discomfort, try to create a space around myself so I don't react, and instead I reflect and respond, that I don't shy away from what is uncomfortable, right? And you hope the transferable skill, of course, is when you get off the mat, that in your life, take these with you. So my best advice is the advice I give myself every day, and that's trust in the great unknown. Take the leap anyway.
Beautiful. Hi. Well, I thank you both. I will reach out once we sign off here and thank Joan for making the introduction.
The magnificent.
I love Joan Spangler.
Joan Spangler. crying all my life
I
too
try
many
to tell
times
her all
over.
the time how much I love her.
Joan, who not only taught me how to be an actor, but taught me like how to promote and encourage and support and just lift other people up. Really,
That's exactly who she is.
it is the most magnificent person I could have ever hoped to have met in this life, who gave me the ability to make a living when I went to Los Angeles in agencies and supporting people and as an actor, the unwavering. You know, it's so funny. I remember one time it was like a year or two after being represented with her, and I'm like, John, I keep going on these auditions. I mean, I'll keep doing it, but I'm just not booking, and it's just getting callbacks. And really, is like, what, Joan? Really, she looks at me and she just shakes her head and she goes, "You don't even know what you're capable of yet, do you?" And that belief in me, always unwavering, total supportive, whole career, incredible.
Yeah, there's nothing like your artistic family.
Right?
Yep. Well, gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for your stories, for your example of what's possible. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.